Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jenna.
My name is Hannah, and today we have another music therapist with us. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, hello. I'm Suzanne Hanser. I have been in this field for many decades, so I can introduce myself as the current president of the International Association for Music and Medicine. I've been a past president of the National Association for Music Therapy and also the World Federation of Music Therapy. So I've done a few things in my time. My main job is at Berklee College of Music, where I established the music therapy department. And I've worked with many different kinds of facilities and people. And I've had the pleasure of being engaged with people from all over the world, thanks to my international work. So that's probably enough.
That's amazing. Can you share a little bit, Suzanne, why music therapy? What inspires you about music therapy?
Well, way back when I decided to become a music therapist, I was really sick when I was a child. And I say that the piano was my best friend. My parents bought me a piano after a long hospitalization, and they couldn't really afford it, but they made it happen. And it was in my bedroom. And in my recovery, I really just played my heart out. You know what that's like, I'm sure. So I was looking into careers when I was in high school. And I was interested in many different things, including psychology, but I really didn't know what psychology was. I didn't know what a psychologist really did. So, that was sort of on the back burner, but I felt like I really didn't want to leave music. I didn't want to spend my day without having a piano nearby or some other instruments. So I asked my piano teacher about music therapy. Have you ever heard of that? And she said, oh, yes, it's too depressing. You wouldn't like it. So that was that. And I went to Boston University for a degree in music composition. But then I got tired of locking myself in the practice room. And I was concertizing and doing really well, but I really knew there was something else out there. There was a world out there. There were people out there. And I didn't want to just make myself a better pianist. So I reinvestigated music therapy. And at the time, there was no place to study in the New England area. I grew up in New York City. There was nowhere to study. And I ended up sadly transferring away from Boston. Ironically, I came here to establish the music therapy department. And many, many years later, and say, I've come to fulfill my destiny. I couldn't study music therapy here, and here I am.
That sounds like a really full circle transition for you.
Isn't that something? I have lots of stories like that. It's really been amazing. You live long enough and you complete the circle.
When you think about your college experience, when you did go through the music therapy program and maybe how you started the Berklee program, what were some things that you took into consideration when starting the program and things you knew that you wanted and needed in the program?
Well, why don't I start with that last bit of the question, if that's all right, Hannah, because I loved the challenge. I moved from California to start this program. I didn't think I was going to do something like this in my lifetime. And Lee Burke, who was the president of Berklee, you may not know that's why Berklee is spelled Berklee, said, we want to establish the best program in the world. And I knew that Boston had some of the finest medical centers, finest educational institutions, that if music therapy could be established amongst, Harvard Medical School and Tufts Medical Center and all of the incredible healthcare and educational services that abound here in this city, I thought this could be really something, and it could be a really good challenge. So that was my mission, to have music therapy accepted here. And I really fulfilled my goal, I have to say. We have teams of music therapists in Boston Children's Hospital, at Massachusetts General Hospital, which is now Mass General Brigham. We have music therapists in clinics and nursing homes and rehab centers. Spalding Rehabilitation Center, internationally renowned, has music therapists there. So that really was a vision that I had. And I've been here almost 30 years. So I hope I would have accomplished something. But I actually am very proud of the graduates who have been able to really pioneer music therapy in their own hometowns, based on their experience here.
Do you find that you give any advice or training in terms of being able to start your own program like that? Do people often come to you for that advice?
Yeah, I actually tell our graduates that you're not going to find a music therapy job in the newspaper. You're not going to find it necessarily listed on these platforms with the open jobs. There are some, but if you want to create your future, you really need to start your own thing based on your needs, your interests, and your connections. The people that you know who are involved in the kinds of facilities where you'd like to work. Yeah, I really do think that the therapists whom I know who are happiest are those that have created their own job. And I'm not saying start from scratch. I'm saying perhaps half time in one facility, half time in another, perhaps a private practice to supplement a part-time position. Although it's tough up front to do this and daunting for many, I really do encourage people to do it.
What drew you to the education side of music therapy? Was that always something that you were interested in, or was that something that you found later?
You know, it really was something almost from the start, Jenna. I was in something called the UPCUT program, which I think stood for Undergraduate Program for College and University Teaching. And that enabled me to apprentice with a professor. So even before I thought, oh, yes, I want to be a professor, because, you know, I was an undergraduate. I hadn't really known what the field was, never mind practiced music therapy. So I didn't have that particular ambition, but I knew that this program would enable me to work closely and apprentice a professor. And so I got to do that with Donald Michel, who is a very well-known music therapy educator, and also with Clifford Madsen, who is still at the Florida State University. And it was just an unbelievable opportunity to assist them in their research and to assist them in teaching. And I really did love the teaching. And I found that if I was good at music therapy, I could apply the skills that I had, and maybe some talent, to educating students and training future music therapists. And it's really stuck with me. And I've had other positions clinically and administratively and what have you, but I've always come back to the teaching. In fact, a few years ago, I left the chair position because I missed the teaching. I wanted to teach more, and so now I'm just on the faculty, but it's a promotion for me.
Where do you feel like your balance is in terms of clinical work, educational work, and administrative work, especially with you working internationally as well? Where do you find that balance within yourself?
Well, Hannah, I was listening for what you were going to ask me to balance, because that is the truest challenge of life, balance. I don't think there is any such thing, by the way. But that said, you didn't mention family. You didn't mention, household responsibilities, to marriage or to children or to taking care of parents. And that's been my greatest challenge, to manage to balance, not balance, I can't balance, but to be able to give sufficient time, I guess I'll say that, to my family while being a very ambitious career person with a lot of goals in my life. And so I've been fortunate in the academic environment that I've had considerable flexibility. That when I've had clinical positions and administrative positions that were 8 to 5, I found myself really miserable.
Mm.
I hated punching the clock. And when I had some flexibility to come in at times that I was needed and then give my time to intensive work on my own, I was far more productive and I was happier. And I was able to spend my, good brain time early morning, really putting in the time. Right now, for instance, I'm working on a new book called Music for Wellness, Feel the Music, See the Light. I get up at 6 a.m. and I start writing. I actually make my coffee. I start writing, and about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, I get my coffee and drink. I am totally in the zone. So I'm very disciplined. And I used to actually write in my calendar. And this is something I recommend. Go home.
Yeah.
Write that in the calendar to ensure that you are making time for yourself, your family, your loved ones, your social life, or whatever it is, your musical life that doesn't occur during the day. So yeah, balance isn't a word I strive for anymore. I'm too realistic, but making time for things that are important, that I'm getting better at. No perfect world, but yes, I do considerable work in the global community and my leadership of the International Association for Music and Medicine. But I'm also teaching, I'm also writing, I'm also speaking, writing a lot of recommendations. And I always have clinical work and research. So I'm part of several laboratories. I'm part of a lab at Northeastern University here in Boston called MIND, and it stands for Music in Neural Dynamics. So it's actually a neuroscience lab, and I'm learning a whole lot there. And I'm part of the geriatric psychiatry department at Brigham and Women's Hospital, part of Mass General Brigham, and I do clinical research. So that way I get to work with people. And my research is clinical outcome research for the most part, except at the Mind Lab when it's all about the brain. But I really enjoy the clinical work, and that way I can integrate that into the research. And my writing is writing up the research as well, and then I teach it. So I get to do it all. I'm very, very privileged.
I would love to hear you talk a little bit about your writing process. How did you start writing and publishing within the profession, and what was that like for you?
Well, thanks for asking, because right now I say I'm in the writing cave. As you can tell, I really get immersed and I get into the flow, the zone, so that I can really write and be productive. When I was apprentice for Dr. Madsen at Florida State as an undergraduate, I published my first paper in the Journal of Music Therapy. He asked me to do my own study on comparing research done by undergraduates versus graduate students. And so I put together this whole research study, and it was published in the Journal of Music Therapy. So that was so fun. He made it fun. He was an incredible mentor. I really looked up to him. He wrote books and he did research and wrote many articles and contributed so much to the research of our field of music therapy. So he was a role model for me, and I found that I enjoyed writing. And then I've written a lot of research articles, but frankly, they tend to be dry. They have to follow a standard format. I have to, talk about the recruitment and the subjects, and I have to have the participants and their demographics, and I have to have this table and this statistics and blah, blah. And it gets a little old. So I still enjoy research and doing that. But I found that I started writing textbooks when there wasn't a textbook. So my first textbook was Music Therapy Practicum, because there wasn't anything, a guidebook, a handbook to go alongside that. So I wrote a practicum manual for my own needs. And then somebody at another college said, oh, can we use that? And I said, sure. And I was just giving it away. And then P Press in Oakland came to me, I don't know how, and said, oh, would you like to publish that? Yeah, might as well. So, you know, it's just sort of weird. And then I got a call from someone that was publishing a series of handbooks. So it was a social work handbook and a psychologist handbook. And they said, would you write the music therapist handbook? So I did that as part of this series. And then the series actually never panned out. So I had this book. And usually you check with the publishers to whether they are interested in this kind of book, but I really had the book. And so I got to publish it under Green Press. And then when I came to Berklee, it was like, I don't know, maybe 5 years old. I'm not good at dates, but it was old. And coming to Berklee, I really had a new vision for what music therapy was. So I published the New Music Therapist Handbook. And it was called the New Music Therapist Handbook because it was new, not because it was for the new music therapist. And that's what most people think it is when they use it to study for the board certification exam. It's like, oh, I'm a new music therapist, I need this. It's like, no, it was new. There was a music therapist handbook. So anyway, like I said, I'm full of stories that followed my career and made it fun, made it enjoyable to write. And now I have quite a few books behind me. I'm very excited, if you don't mind my talking about the book I'm writing now, because I've written Integrative Health through music therapy and manage your stress and pain through music. This book is very different. This book, you know how at the beginning of a chapter, you often see a quotation or a little poem or a haiku or something like that. This starts with music. It's going to be published by Hal Leonard, who I think is one of the, if not the largest music publisher in the States. And so they are providing an audio channel for the book. So when you get the book, you're going to listen and you're going to read. So the chapter starts with an audio file of a musical intention about the topic, and then a narrative from the composer of the music. It's all original music, and it's all actually my students from around the world who have written music that in the first few chapters, you feel the comfort, the motivation, the energy, the creativity, the spirit. So there are about 10 or 11 audio files that go along with each chapter. And I kind of unpack, you know, how is it that music can be comforting and how would you create comforting music? But mainly it's for listening and reading. So I thought that's kind of a new idea and has kept me challenged.
I wonder how it sort of feels for you, or if you have a lot of awareness around. I'm sure you do, but in the sense that I can confidently tell you that both Jenna and I were required to read the New Music Therapist Handbook in our undergraduate training. And just like knowledge that your publications have become sort of a staple in the undergraduate music therapy training.
So what's the question?
I'm curious how, if you have the awareness of that, how that sort of feels to you as a music therapist and in a professional setting.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I think it's cool that you both read it. I still don't quite believe it. You know, it's kind of hard, especially nowadays. You don't even bring your book to a publisher; you just press send. It's very anticlimactic, you know, and then you wonder who in the world is reading this. So I get the idea that people are reading it, and that of course makes me feel good. What actually happens is that people will meet me in an elevator or something, and they'll see my name tag and they'll say, oh, you're Suzanne Hanser. I thought you were taller.
Oh.
So you just never know, you know, what's out there, who's out there. I teach a MOOC that's a massive open online course that has almost 33,000 students from around the world. It's like mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I just can't conceive of that in 118 countries. Who are these people? And what does it mean to have, something of yours shared with so many people? I can't get my head around it. But then again, somebody will tap me on the shoulder in a conference and say, I took your course. It's like, oh, hi. So the whole thing is mind-boggling. I'm very grateful to hear you say that I have a following, because I work hard, and I still work hard. And again, you just never know what's going to make it.
Yeah.
It's like a rock star. What makes the $1 million hit? You don't know that.
Well, I can say with confidence that Temple and SUNY Fredonia both use it in their program. But I also think that it's, and Jenna, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's fairly commonplace in the undergraduate curriculum.
Yeah, like a lot of people too, when preparing for the exam, like that's always what I hear people saying, like review the handbook, go read the handbook.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
Well,
very
it makes me feel good if it's launched some careers, because I say when our students graduate, I say to the parents, you birthed these people, but we, the faculty, birthed their careers. And that's another thing that's really kept me in teaching. I feel a responsibility to share all this experience I've had and somehow enable others to use their talents and their abilities in this incredible field. It's the most fulfilling profession I could ever have imagined.
We interviewed Kathleen Howland yesterday, and she actually said something very similar.
Oh, wonderful. My colleague here.
Yeah. She actually said something very similar about being an educator and watching.
She's remarkable.
Yeah. It was very lovely to speak with her. And she was actually
She's brilliant.
A few weeks ago at A Place to Be, because she knows our. She sort of made a similar remark about seeing.
Yes, he's a Berklee grad,
Yeah. Yep.
We have a lot of Berklee grads here too.
They're very fortunate to be working with you.
Oh, we're very fortunate to be working with them, honestly. But yeah, she had made a similar remark of seeing her students leave the program and being able to see them grow and visit them professionally 10 years down the line and see like the music therapist and the professional that they've become.
Absolutely.
Which I feel like, Jenna, I know as a future hopeful educator, I feel like that would be very cool.
What is like your biggest advice that you give as students are graduating, as students are becoming young professionals in those first couple years, which can be a huge switch? What is that advice that you give to those individuals?
Well, advice is cheap. It's easy to give advice. It's not an easy field. You don't just, like I said, go to the open positions that are available and you pick one and you get a really good salary and benefits. You can't expect all of that as a music therapist. What I say to our graduates is that you have to be yourself. You have to be true to your vision, your mission, to what you want to do. And you have to know that you have all that you need. You have the resources. You have the training. You have your abilities, and you need to know that, so that when the right position comes up or the right place has an opening, you're right there. You're confident. you're ready. You know that you can do this work. That confidence, that self-confidence and self-compassion may be the most important characteristics that I think you need to succeed. Self-compassion, being kind to yourself, because there's always failure, there's always rejection, and you have to know that you have what you need, that you are going to succeed if you persist and if you are fully committed to doing that.
I'm curious what, thinking on the opposite side of that, when going into looking for jobs and walking into an interview and meeting with potential supervisors, potential employers, how that fits in, and also with your personal experience, the feelings that you get when you're in a space, some non-negotiables for you, things like that.
Yeah, well, it's all about the fit. So when my students are applying for a job they really want, and they go in for the interview and they call me and say, you know, I have no idea how this went. I didn't get a sense. The sense I get from that is, uh-oh, this may not be a fit. When it feels good, then you have some idea that this is going to be okay. But if you feel like there's a disconnect, or sometimes you get a sense that you're more well-trained than the person interviewing you, that's happened to a lot of people I know, and you have more talent than maybe someone who is a social worker, who is a wannabe rock star, and here you are, and you've got the chops, you've got the ability, you've got the talent. So the dynamics are what really are telling. And so paying attention to those cues and trusting yourself, so that if it doesn't work out, it was not the right fit. If they didn't want you, there's something wrong with that picture. And it's not you. It's that maybe they were looking for someone else or something else that you didn't excel in. We all have our strengths and our limitations. So again, it's like self-compassion, self-confidence, empowerment, knowing that you can do what you want to do. It's tantamount to success.
Can you speak a little bit about your work internationally, what you notice in all of these different countries, what the similarities are and what maybe the differences are as well?
Yes, so international work humbles me. There's so much I have no idea about. And so I learn every time I encounter someone who's trained differently from me, who's from a different culture, who speaks a different language. I really thrive on trying to complement my skill set with others and enhancing my cultural chops, you know, and just knowing about the mores, the beliefs, the rituals, the music of different cultures is just life enhancing. And we make so many assumptions. I do anyway. Make assumptions about what music therapy is. I make assumptions about what music is. And when I travel the world and meet people who share a similar mission to me, they may be doing it completely differently. And that's what's eye-opening. So so mainly the world is my teacher. It's important for us to know that American music therapy is not music therapy around the world. And I really particularly am jealous of cultures where music is just a part of everyday life, part of the community, where you go to the park and you dance every evening and you you join sing-a-thons or whatever they're called in whatever country. That's just a part of what the people do there. For us in the West, sitting and listening and being quiet until we're allowed to applaud, it's not natural. We know that as music therapists, but the way we do music here is very different than some other cultures. And so I really love knowing that there are other ways to be, other ways to make music, other ways to appreciate music, other ways to be a music therapist. I learn from healing. I'm known as a researcher, I think, and a scientist, but I really, again, love and value the healing traditions. That are just not founded with scientific evidence, but are just remarkable feats and things that have lasted for thousands of years. So I'm not willing to just use my own background and my own training as a thermometer of what is good work or what is music therapy.
How do you feel like learning from other international music therapists and observing that work has influenced your work directly?
Well, I've become more spiritual. I don't know if that's just getting older, getting a little wiser, or learning so much that I could never understand. And so for all of the above, I'm growing spiritually. And I'm growing in openness to different ways of healing, of therapy, of music, and it's all good. It's all enriching, and it's all making me a better person. Never mind a better music therapist.
I also am curious about when you think about and reflect on your career, which has involved so many different aspects of music therapy. What are kind of the salient moments that stick out to you as that I can pinpoint as a turning point in my career?
These are great questions, by the way. Thank you, Hannah and Jenna. I love thinking about those turning points. They all involve a person. I think about a person whom I worked with who, had a spark, who in a moment had an insight or created something so beautiful musically. All of those turning points are those interpersonal moments in a music therapy session.
Looking over at that history, and not only just of your own profession in music therapy, but also just the profession as a whole, and how it's shaped over the years, what have you noticed have been those big changes, those big growth areas for the profession?
Well, first of all, we are finally amassing the scientific evidence that not only talks about the effectiveness of music therapy, but we're beginning to actually understand how music therapy works, at least under the hood in the brain, with some of the new neurological findings. And so, the things we always knew, the things maybe we took for granted, we're now saying, oh, what's going on in your limbic system? That's what's happening. And so it adds another layer of understanding, which leads to credibility. So I think that graduates today go out and say, oh, nobody knows what music therapy is. But it's not true. When I graduated, nobody knew what music therapy was. But now people really do. Not everyone, of course. But there's so much more awareness, and there's so much more support. The Sound Health Initiative, the NIA, the NEA, and the Kennedy Center coming together, $5 million in research support. That doesn't come from nowhere. That's a milestone for music therapy. There's also all sorts of positions now at the at the World Health Organization. There's an arts program manager. There's arts in so many health centers, whether it's music therapy or creative arts therapy or expressive therapies or something else, just the use of music-based interventions and music medicine. So I've seen a lot of expansion into recognition and acceptance, not where we'd like to be, but really, really increasing. And the fact that our literature, not just our research literature, but all of the books now that describe different specialties and different approaches, we're getting greater clarity on what it is we do, because we all do our own thing, really. We use our own abilities and talents in that very personal space called music therapy. But we're using a variety of philosophies and techniques and understandings about people. And we're also growing in that way. We're growing culturally. Obviously, there's been such attention now that we can connect globally. You know, when I went to school, there wasn't the internet. I had to actually read books and telephone people around the world, and the connections weren't good and it was very expensive. So just being able to link now and learn, and now we have translation apps, and we have the cultural humility to know that we don't know every culture. We don't know the needs and the interests and the people of every culture. And we never could, but we know enough, I hope, to be humble. So we're learning a lot in that way. What does it mean to be culturally relevant as a music therapist? And we're certainly giving a lot of attention to that, which is well overdue. So we're becoming more citizens of the world. I think that we are getting away from one model, one way to do music therapy. And we're getting away from what a music therapist looks like, and even what their background is, not just racially, culturally, but their philosophy, their training, the way they approach life.
I'm curious, as we move forward in the profession, where do you think we're headed? Where would you like to see us head? And where would you like to see us grow?
Oh, yes, as I said, excellent questions. And that one, I almost prefer, well, I won't say I'm not going to answer it, but I think that if I have expectations of what music therapy is going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I might be disappointed. If I can remain open and allow myself that creativity, that flexibility to take in what I need to create the next best approach to helping people. I think it's that openness that allows me to grow into the future. And I would hope that every music therapist similarly doesn't say, well, I want to work in this kind of setting. I want to work with this kind of people. I want to work with, but allows the world to change in front of us, the world's needs to become evident, and then we can respond to their needs. Post-pandemic, the world's needs are so different. And I think we each have a key there as music therapists to helping people get through whatever this next chapter is. But I don't think it will help us to define it or define it in advance of what it will be. We just learned tragically what expectations bring. A pandemic, who expected that? And yet it has opened our world to something beyond, well, look at us here on Zoom. which did not exist some years ago. So have I successfully not answered that question?
I can safely say that no one else has answered that question like that.
Oh, okay.
That's
But
always our favorite, is like this question, because everybody answers it so differently. And so it's always our favorite part, is getting to that question and hearing everybody's voice.
that being said, Jenna, do you have any other questions?
I don't think I do.
Well, then,
Okay.
we thank you for joining us, and it was absolutely lovely to talk with you.
Likewise, you have great questions, and you're great interviewers.